French President Emmanuel Macron in war of words with Polish government credit for geared up. President Emmanuel Macron of France risked creating an east-west rift in Europe on Friday after warning that Poland was heading for the margins of the bloc. Poland hit back that the French premier was arrogant, inexperienced, and had no right to push it around. The spat came after Warsaw categorically rejected Mr. Macron's push to overhaul the so-called Posted Workers Directive, a controversial EU rule enabling companies to send temporary workers from low-wage countries to richer ones without paying local social charges. Speaking in the Bulgarian coastal city of Varna, Mr. Macron said Poland today is not a country that can show Europe the way, it's a country that has decided to go against European interests in many areas. Europe was built on public freedoms that Poland is infringing today, he added. The country is placing itself on the margins of Europe's future history, he added, saying it had isolated itself. Mr. Macron had already prompted Polish ire recently by warning it could not treat the EU like a supermarket. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg and Polish Prime Minister Beata Szydlo attend a meeting in Warsaw, Poland. Credit JANEKSKARZYNSKIAFP. Beata Szydlo, the Prime Minister, hit back by saying perhaps his Macron's arrogant comments result from lack of political experience, which I can understand. But I expect that he will make up for this shortcoming and will be more restrained in the future, she told the right-wing Upolitice.pl news website. Macron aides said he was merely reiterating criticism already expressed by the European Commission. The diplomatic crisis came as tensions flared between the Netherlands and Hungary. Budapest recalled its ambassador in The Hague after the Dutch envoy to Hungary accused Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government of using tactics similar to Islamist terrorists by painting all asylum seekers as potentially dangerous. Mr. Orban has previously called immigration the Trojan horse of terrorism. Hungary demanded an explanation for these baseless insults. Mr. Macron was on the final leg of a three-day tour of Eastern and Central Europe to drum up support for reforming the directive at a Brussels summit on October 19-20. Emmanuel Macron jostles his way to the front of G20 photo to stand by Donald Trump. 0138 The French president is under pressure back home to prove he is making progress with his campaign pledge to build a Europe that protects. Next Monday he will host the leaders of Germany, Spain and Italy for talks, as he tries to enhance France's leadership in Europe. Wealthier EU nations say the posted workers rule leads to unfair competition on national labour markets and undercuts local workforces. Nearly 300,000 such workers are operating in France, mainly in the building industry and transport. Backed by Vienna and Berlin, Paris now wants the duration of these job postings to be limited to 12 months, half the period proposed by the European Commission, with Britain, Poland's key ally in Europe, distracted as it heads towards Europe's exit door. Many expected the Polish government to set aside its truculent Euroscepticism to build new bridges with the other major EU players. But it has failed to this. A series of Brussels-Warsaw clashes over migration, the environment and the rule of law have led to EU capitals losing patience with Poland, and to make matters worse, relations with Germany took a recent blow after members of Law and Justice, the governing party, raised the issue of getting reparations from Berlin for wartime damage. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban credit Emmanuel Dunandafp. Poland is not being isolated, Witold Waszczykowski, Poland's foreign minister, told a joint news conference in Warsaw with his Romanian and Turkish counterparts and NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. He earlier told Radio Maria instead of forcing the French economy to compete, President Macron has come up with the idea to limit our activities on the common market. In a pointed move, Mr. Macron chose to ignore Poland on a tour of Central Europe that took in the Czech Republic, Romania and Bulgaria, despite it being by far the biggest and most economically significant state in the region. Łukasz Lipinski, a political expert from Polityka Insight, a Polish analytical firm, said Mr. Macron wanted to drive a wedge into the V4, a loose grouping of countries comprising Poland, Hungary and the Czech and Slovak republics, by splitting off the more Eurosceptic Warsaw and Budapest from the other two. I think the Polish Prime Minister has once again made a strategic error, Mr. Macron said. French President Emmanuel Macron clasps hands with Bulgarian Prime Minister Boiko Borisov. Credit for geared up. The Polish people deserve better than this. The Prime Minister will have a tough time explaining why it is good to pay Polish people bad wages in Poland and elsewhere in Europe. The French leader's pugnacity comes as his popularity has dipped back home as his government is about to drive through controversial labour reforms. With criticism from political rivals increasingly pointed, Mr. Macron has reportedly decided to change his communication strategy from lofty and Jupiterian to speaking to the French once or twice a month. The French hate reforms. I'll have to explain them, he was cited as saying. Philippe Martinez, whose CGT union has called for strike action on September 12, said he was treating the French like imbeciles.